What would you do if someone tried to steal what you built with your own two hands, not through force, but through manipulation, deception, and an abuse of power? When I first opened my small private school, I thought I had found the perfect place. It was nestled in a quiet neighborhood, far from the noise of the city, surrounded by towering trees and a wide green yard that made it feel like a sanctuary. I had spent months transforming the old, charming building into a warm and welcoming environment for children, painting classrooms, setting up play areas, and even planting a small garden where the kids could grow their own vegetables. It wasn't just a school. It was a space for creativity, learning, and community. A place where children felt safe. A place that was mine. At first, the neighborhood seemed welcoming enough. Parents stopped by, curious about the new school, asking questions about the programs I offered. Some even thanked me, saying they were happy to have a local alternative to overcrowded public schools. But then, one afternoon, Karen appeared. I remember the way she walked onto my property, slow, deliberate, as if she already owned the place. She was dressed in a crisp beige blazer, carrying an expensive leather folder, her short blonde bob perfectly styled. She wore a wide smile, but it wasn't the friendly kind. It was the kind of smile people put on when they're about to tell you something you won't like but want to make it sound like they're doing you a favor. "Hi there," she said brightly, stopping just outside the front gate. "I'm Karen, president of the HOA from the neighborhood nearby. I just wanted to welcome you personally. This is such a lovely property." I smiled politely, wiping the paint off my hands from the bench I had been refurbishing. I had heard of the HOA from some parents, but I wasn't part of it. My property wasn't in their jurisdiction. That should have been the end of it. But the moment I told her that, her smile faltered. "Oh," she said, tilting her head slightly. "That's interesting." She recovered quickly, smoothing out her expression, but I noticed the way her eyes flickered toward the building, the yard, and the small playground I had set up. There was something calculating behind her gaze. "Well, you know," she continued, "we take great pride in maintaining the aesthetics of the neighborhood. Perhaps you'd consider joining the HOA? We could help with a few improvements. Maybe make it a bit more community-friendly." There it was. The offer that wasn't really an offer. The words were polite, but I could feel the weight behind them. I kept my voice steady. "I appreciate the thought, but I'm happy with how things are." Karen's smile tightened, just a fraction. "Of course. Just thought I'd reach out. You know, to be neighborly." She turned to leave, but I had the strangest feeling that this wasn't the last time I'd see her. I was right. Because a few weeks later, Karen came back. This time, she wasn't just here to introduce herself. She was here with a clipboard, a pen, and an agenda. A few weeks passed, and I convinced myself that Karen's visit had been nothing more than an overly eager HOA president overstepping her boundaries. Maybe she had just been curious about the school. Maybe I was overthinking it. But then I started noticing strange things. At first, it was subtle. I would catch people lingering near the school fence, standing just a little too long, looking around as if they were assessing something rather than admiring the property. Once, I spotted a man in a crisp polo shirt with a HOA logo embroidered on the chest, standing across the street, taking notes. The moment he noticed me watching, he quickly turned and walked away. And then, Karen returned. This time, she wasn't just stopping by for a friendly chat, she was standing outside the front gate, clipboard in hand, scribbling down notes. She didn't even acknowledge me at first. She was too busy looking up at the building, assessing. I approached, keeping my tone casual. "Everything okay?" Karen startled slightly, as if she hadn't expected me to catch her. "Oh. Yes. Just checking the property." She let out a little forced chuckle, tapping the end of her pen against her clipboard. "You know, some of the HOA members have been talking about your school. We think it has a lot of potential. Maybe it could be opened up to the larger community. Wouldn't it be nice to hold events here? Maybe a public space for all the neighborhood kids? I blinked. It's already open to the community. It's a school. For children. Of course. But maybe, just maybe, there could be more inclusivity. Like free public tours, open access to the playground, things that benefit everyone. Her voice was sweet, but the underlying message wasn't lost on me. This wasn't a suggestion, it was a test. Karen wanted to see how much she could push. I forced a polite smile. I'll think about it. Karen left, but that wasn't the end of it. If anything, it was just the beginning. The next few weeks were a nightmare. First, I started getting phone calls from concerned parents. Someone had been spreading rumors about the school. Claims that it was unsafe, poorly managed, not up to code. Some parents, panicked, pulled their children out without even asking me about it. Then, one morning, I woke up to find a city inspector at my front door. Just a routine check, he said, but the moment he stepped onto the property, he pulled out a long list of complaints. Improper fencing around the playground. Potential tripping hazards on the walkway. Concerns about fire safety regulations. I was stunned. I had never received a single violation notice before. I asked where the complaints had come from. The inspector hesitated, then admitted they had been filed anonymously. Anonymous. Karen. I kept my composure as I led the inspector through the property, pointing out that everything was up to code, that the complaints were completely baseless. He seemed to agree, there was nothing wrong. By the time he left, he even apologized for the inconvenience. But the damage was already done. That same afternoon, another official-looking letter arrived, this time directly from the HOA. The envelope was thick, the kind meant to intimidate. I opened it and read the first line. We've noticed that your school is not in compliance with HOA standards. My stomach dropped. It was complete nonsense. My school wasn't even part of the HOA. The letter went on to list changes I was expected to make. Repainting the building to match HOA-approved colors. Modifying the front landscaping to better fit the community aesthetic. Adjusting the school's hours to reduce neighborhood disturbance. It ended with a thinly veiled threat: failure to comply could result in further action. I clenched my fists. This wasn't about aesthetics. This was about control. Karen and her HOA weren't just trying to pressure me into compliance. They were trying to claim my school as their own. That night, I installed security cameras around the property. Something told me I was going to need them. The security cameras were a necessary step, but I had no idea just how quickly they would prove their worth. A few nights after the bogus HOA letter arrived, I was reviewing the footage when I saw something that made my blood run cold. Karen. Standing just outside my gate. It was late, past midnight. She was holding a flashlight and a notebook, snapping pictures of the property. For a while, she just stood there, writing things down, but then she did something that made my stomach tighten. She walked along the fence line, measuring distances. Measuring. I didn't know why, but I knew it wasn't good. The next morning, I got a call from Greg Thompson, an HOA board member I had never spoken to before. His voice was low, almost apologetic. "Listen, I probably shouldn't be telling you this," he said, "but there's an emergency HOA meeting tonight. Karen's pushing for a vote to redraw the neighborhood boundary. She wants to officially include your property under HOA jurisdiction." I gripped the phone so tightly my fingers ached. "She what?" "She claims it was a clerical mistake years ago, that your school was meant to be in the HOA's district but got left out. She's saying bringing it in would be a correction." I wanted to scream. Instead, I took a deep breath. "How many people are backing her?" Greg hesitated. Too many. You should come. Fight it. I didn't need him to tell me twice. That evening, I walked into the HOA meeting ready for war. The room was packed with board members, homeowners, and, of course, Karen, standing at the front with her usual practiced smile. She was already mid-speech when I arrived. And that's why, for the betterment of the neighborhood, it only makes sense to bring the school under HOA protection. After all, we want to ensure safety, consistency, and community engagement. We can help with upgrades, improvements. I cut her off. ****, you mean control, ****. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to me. Karen didn't even blink. Elena. I didn't see you there. Please, take a seat. I ignored the invitation. You're lying. This has nothing to do with safety or improvements. You're trying to steal my property and put it under HOA rule without my consent. A few of the board members shifted uncomfortably. Karen's expression remained perfectly composed. Elena, this is simply an administrative correction. You were always meant to be part of the HOA, and... No, I wasn't, I shot back. And you know it. I turned to the crowd. My property is outside HOA jurisdiction, and I have zero obligation to comply with any of their rules. Karen has been harassing me for months, sending fake violation letters, filing false complaints, even sneaking onto my property in the middle of the night. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some of the board members exchanged uneasy glances. Karen let out a soft laugh. Oh, Elena. I think you might be overreacting. I pulled out my phone, turned it toward the crowd, and hit play. The security footage flickered on the screen. Karen. Standing outside my gate. Measuring. Taking notes. The room went dead silent. For the first time, Karen's composure cracked. It was just for a second, a flicker of shock and anger, but I saw it. Greg stood up. Karen, is this true? Were you on her property at night? Karen recovered fast, of course not. This is ridiculous. That footage could have been doctored. Oh, give me a break, someone muttered. Another homeowner stood up. You've been harassing her, Karen. We've all seen you lurking around. And now you're trying to rewrite property lines to force her into the HOA? The room turned on her. By the time the vote was called, Karen's power was slipping. The measure to annex my property failed, but the damage was already done. Her credibility was crumbling. I thought that might be the end of it. I was wrong. The next morning, I arrived at the school to find something that made my stomach drop. Graffiti. Spray painted across the school fence in bright red letters. Keep your trashy school out of our neighborhood. I felt sick. It wasn't just one or two markings. Someone had taken the time to cover the entire fence. They had used multiple colors, making it clear this wasn't just a random act of vandalism. It was deliberate. I stormed inside, pulled up the security footage, and my anger turned to white-hot rage. It wasn't just anyone. It was Karen's teenage nephew. Sneaking onto the property in the middle of the night. Can in hand. I took the footage straight to the HOA office. Karen was behind her desk, pretending to be busy when I walked in. She barely looked up. Elena, what a surprise. Can I help you with something? I tossed my phone onto the desk. The footage started playing. Karen's expression didn't change, not at first. She let the video run, watching her nephew spray hate speech across my fence, and when it ended, she sighed. I don't see how this involves me. I could have screamed. Instead, I leaned forward. If you don't clean it up, I'm taking this straight to the police. She gave me a tight-lipped smile. Do what you have to do, dear. And that's when I realized something. Karen didn't just want me gone. She wanted to ruin me. I walked out of Karen's office with my hands shaking, not from fear, but from pure, seething rage. She wasn't even trying to deny it anymore. She knew what she had done, and worse, she wasn't afraid of being caught. That meant one thing: Karen believed she was untouchable. I was about to prove her wrong. The moment I got back to my school, I went public. I had spent weeks documenting every encounter, every letter, every false violation claim she had filed. I had security footage of her trespassing, measuring my property in the middle of the night, and now I had proof that her own nephew had vandalized my school. I didn't just post it to my own social media, I sent it to local community groups, parents, and even news outlets. I made sure the world saw exactly what Karen had been doing. The response was immediate. My inbox flooded with messages. Some were from parents who had pulled their kids out of my school, now furious that they had been manipulated. Others were from neighbors who had been skeptical of Karen for years, but had never had hard proof of her underhanded tactics. Some even admitted that they had been pressured into signing HOA petitions without knowing the full extent of what Karen was trying to do. And then, the real twist came. Greg Thompson, the HOA board member who had tipped me off about the boundary vote, called me in the middle of the night. His voice was tense, but there was an edge of something else. Guilt. "Elena," he said. "There's something you need to know." I gripped the phone tighter. "What is it?" "There's been financial discrepancies. We went through HOA records tonight, and, look, Karen's been using HOA funds for this entire thing. The fake violation notices, the letters, even the inspector who showed up at your school. She paid for it with HOA money." I sat down, hard. "You're saying she's been stealing from the HOA?" "Yes. And that's not all." Greg took a deep breath. "She's been planning this for months. The petition wasn't just about annexing your school into the HOA. She wanted to convert your property into a shared community space. She was never going to let you keep running it as a private school. She wanted the city to rezone it." My blood turned ice cold. This wasn't just an overzealous HOA president pushing her limits. This was a full-blown hostile takeover. And she had been planning it since the moment I opened my doors. I ended the call and sat in silence for a long time. Then, I stood up, grabbed my laptop and compiled everything. Every fake letter. Every trespassing incident. Every piece of evidence that proved what Karen had done. And when I was done, I didn't just post it online. I sent it directly to the city council. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Local news stations picked up the story. HOA board members started resigning in protest. Parents who had been too afraid to speak out were now coming forward, exposing how Karen had bullied them into compliance for years. And then, the final blow, an email from the city council. They had launched an official investigation into Karen's actions. For the first time, Karen wasn't in control. And she knew it. That night, my security cameras caught her again. She was standing outside my gate. This time, she wasn't alone. She had a pair of bolt cutters in her hand. She was trying to remove the "no trespassing" signs I had put up. But she never got the chance. Because I had already called the sheriff. By the time the deputies arrived, Karen was still there, bolt cutters in one hand, a furious look on her face. She tried to play it off, claiming she was just making sure the signs were placed correctly. The officers didn't buy it. They reviewed the footage. They listened as I explained everything. And then, for the first time since this nightmare began, they slapped Karen with a citation. For trespassing. For destruction of property. For violating the very HOA rule she claimed to uphold. And when the officers escorted her off my property, her practiced smile was gone. She knew. She had lost. Karen's downfall wasn't just satisfying, it was absolute. The moment she was cited for trespassing and property destruction, the cracks in her carefully constructed facade of power turned into full-blown fractures. The story spread like wildfire, and the fallout came faster than even I expected. The city council didn't just reject her attempts to annex my school, they launched a full investigation into the HOA's finances. When the audit results came back, it was worse than anyone imagined. Karen had been misusing HOA funds for years, funneling money into legal threats, fabricated complaints, and even personal projects disguised as neighborhood improvements. The very board members who once stood by her quickly turned against her to save themselves. Under pressure from the angry community, city officials, and even former allies, Karen had no choice but to resign as HOA president. It was a quiet, unceremonious exit, no farewell speeches, no damage control. She just disappeared, leaving behind an HOA in complete disarray. With her gone, the board was forced to restructure, and several members followed her out the door. As for me, my school was finally safe. The HOA backed off permanently, and in the weeks that followed, the very community Karen tried to manipulate rallied around me. Parents who had been scared into silence spoke up, neighbors who had signed the petition out of pressure apologized, and even some HOA members expressed regret for not stopping Karen sooner. I wasn't just running a school anymore, I had a neighborhood full of people who now saw the importance of standing up to unchecked power. I expanded the curriculum, hired new teachers, and poured my focus into what mattered: the kids, the learning, the future. The fight had been exhausting, but it proved something important. When people come together, even the most power-hungry tyrants can be stopped. As for Karen, she became a cautionary tale, the name people whispered about whenever HOA overreach came up. She lost everything she had schemed for, not because of some grand act of revenge, but because she pushed too far and exposed herself. The most peaceful thing I ever did was fight back. What about you? Have you ever had to stand up to an HOA or a Karen in your life? Share your story below, I'd love to hear who had it worse.